the news. President Biden today spoke with allies and partners about the situation in Ukraine. Next, he'll speak with Republicans. After the U.S. offered over the weekend to evacuate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, amid the Russian invasion, Zelensky reportedly said, quote, "The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride." Oh, man, how badly does Biden wish that quote was his? It's like Zelensky said, "Come with me if you want to live." If Zelensky gets to fight on top of a train, he's officially living Biden's best life. I'm the Amtrak guy. During his keynote speech on Saturday at CPAC, former President Trump said that the country has, quote, lost its self-confidence under President Biden. Well, of course, we all had more self-confidence under you. Do you know how affirming it is to be smarter than the president? Waking up every day with a jump in my step? In his soon-to-be-released book, former President Trump's Attorney General William Barr said, quote, "Trump cared only about one thing, himself. Country and principle took second place." I don't know, dude, second? I think country took fifth place and principle broke its leg and had to be shot. We can't save principle. In the same book, Barr criticized Trump and said, quote, "People are worthwhile to Trump only as a means to his ends as utensils." Said Trump, "That's a lie. I've never used a utensil in my life." Ahead of tomorrow's State of the Union address, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is lifting the chamber's mask mandate, which is concerning to many House members who still need them for attention. A Ukrainian brewery has reportedly switched from producing craft beers to making Molotov cocktails to help fight the Russian military. Though if you really want to slow down the Russians, just give them the craft beer. Ugh, I felt like I ate a loaf of bread. Pumpernickel. Lawmakers in Florida last week passed the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which prohibits classroom discussions about sexual orientation or gender identity. Pretty soon, a Florida school day is just going to be 7 hours of quiet time. Nothing more ironic than when the quiet time punchline gets the quietest response. Maybe they were honoring it. New York Mayor Eric Adams announced yesterday that beginning next week, the city will no longer require vaccine passports at restaurants, which is great news for all the restaurants who already stopped checking them 3 weeks ago. And finally, a doghouse that was struck by a meteorite sold last week for $44,000. Even crazier, it sold on Zillow. President Biden tonight delivered his first State of the Union address, and thank God he got that Supreme Court justice in, because there was not much else to talk about. I think there's a new Batman movie this week. The New York Times published a report yesterday that U.S. officials are currently debating Russian President Vladimir Putin's grip on reality. In related news, Putin just ordered troops into Hogwarts. When asked by a reporter at a Black History Month event yesterday if Americans should be worried about nuclear war, President Biden said no. Yeah, come on, Putin isn't going to bomb the only people still supporting him. That's right, President Biden was asked if Americans should be worried about nuclear war, and he said no. But then the CDC said yes, and the FDA said we'll let you know in 4 to 6 weeks. So I don't know what's going to happen. Officials in Ukraine last week asked Apple CEO Tim Cook to ban Russia from using the company's products and services in response to their attack on Ukraine. Well, if being the only country whose messages in the group chat are green doesn't force Russia to surrender, I don't know what will. This is embarrassment. We are only green. No one even read this text. The Senate last night failed to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin voted with Republicans. Okay, how many times does someone have to vote with Republicans before you consider him a Republican? It's kind of like saying Keith Richards played with the Rolling Stones again. Yeah, because he's a Rolling Stone. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters yesterday that Congress will support, quote, whatever it is that Ukraine needs amid Russia's invasion of the country. Well, unless it's universal health care. In which case there's a copay, it's a mess. New Orleans held its first full-scale Mardi Gras celebration today since 2020, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, but required masks in indoor public spaces. Still, men were throwing beads and yelling, "Show us your chin." Today was National Pig Day. When isn't it? Asked What is wrong with you? Why are you cheering for it like you even knew it was a thing? I don't even understand that reaction. If you cared so much, why didn't you know? I'm gonna tell the joke now, all right? I told you there should be a National Pig Day! Today was National Pig Day. When isn't it? Asked an exhausted Charlotte. This friendship is starting to feel very one-sided. Yeah, it lost its momentum a little bit. When everybody lost their minds about National Pig Day. You know what else? I bet someone here had bacon this morning. On National Pig Day. You monsters. In honor of St. Patrick's Day, Dunkin' Donuts is offering a Shamrock Macchiato. In a related story, Italy has declared war on Ireland. That's right, Dunkin' Donuts is offering a Shamrock Macchiato, which is green and features Irish cream flavor. So look for that on a sidewalk near you. President Biden last night delivered his first State of the Union address, and Chuck Schumer could not figure out when to clap.
The American Rescue Plan helped working people.
It's like every white guy at a hip-hop show. You're clapping on the ones and threes, Richard. During President Biden's State of the Union address last night, several members of Congress wore blue and yellow in solidarity with Ukraine, though I'm not sure everybody understood the assignment. During last night's speech, Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert heckled and booed President Biden on several occasions. In their defense, he is technically the manager. And that technically was a joke. Technically. During President Biden's State of the Union address last night, he accidentally said Iranian instead of Ukrainian. Well, in a speech where he had to pronounce Volodymyr Zelensky and Ketanji Brown Jackson, something had to give. According to a new poll, 71% of Americans who watched President Biden's State of the Union address had a positive reaction to the speech, but let's be honest, everyone who would have had a negative reaction was watching Yellowstone. According to a new survey, New York has the highest median rent price for a one-bedroom apartment in the country. Well, yeah, but it's all about location, location. Location. And finally, Major League Baseball announced yesterday that they are postponing their March 31st opening day and canceling the first two series of regular season baseball after the league could not reach a bargaining agreement with its players' union, which is bad news for the Mets because the regular season is the only one they got. Defense officials in Ukraine have warned that the Kremlin could be using deepfake videos to spread misinformation to Russians. Okay. I knew Putin didn't have an Iron Man suit. The House committee investigating the Capitol attack suggested in a court filing yesterday that it has evidence that former President Trump and his campaign tried to illegally obstruct Congress's counting of electoral votes. Yeah, we know. Watching the House investigate this thing is like watching The Office with your grandmother. I think there's a spark between Jim and that Pam. Yeah, Grandma, it's season 6. A bipartisan group of congressional lawmakers is calling on President Biden to ban Russian oil and gas imports amid the country's invasion of Ukraine. The bill has support from both sides of the aisle and the aisle. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis yesterday told several students standing behind him at an indoor event that they did not need to wear face masks and said, quote, honestly, it's not doing anything and we've got to stop with this COVID theater. Although for people who moved from New York to Florida during the pandemic, that's the only theater they have left. And can you believe what they call bagels down there? I'm doing the Gilded Age New York. You call this a subway? Authorities in Germany yesterday reportedly seized a Russian billionaire's $600 million mega yacht. Said the billionaire, oh no, my backup yacht. Nike announced this week that it's temporarily closing its online store in Russia. Apparently, it was giving Putin some bad ideas. Luxury brand Bulgari said this week that its sales have increased since the Ukrainian invasion as wealthy Russians are buying jewelry amid a collapse of Russia's currency. On the plus side, it does make oligarchs easier to spot. Crown. IKEA has announced it will temporarily pause manufacturing and retail operations in Russia and Belarus due to the invasion of Ukraine, while IKEA in Ukraine is opening their doors to Russian soldiers and hoping they can't find their way out. Amazon confirmed yesterday that it plans to shut down all of its physical bookstores. They're getting back to doing what originally made them successful, putting physical bookstores out of business. A JetBlue pilot blew twice the legal limit on a breathalyzer yesterday after being removed from the cockpit of a plane. They were immediately suspicious since the flight was Delta. What are you doing in here? Oh, let's get this puppy in the air. Where are we headed? Tomorrow is National Sons Day. Said dads, what did I get you? What did I get you? How about a roof over your head, wise guy? What did I get you? Really good dad. And finally, New York Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday unveiled plans to permanently allow bars and restaurants to offer to-go alcoholic drinks. So say hello to New York City's newest mascot, Martini Rat. Oh, they certainly don't have that in Florida, do they? Oh, no, Slurpee Rat. That's the best they can do there.